Hey, Typology Tribe, welcome back. Yes, it's Ian Morgan Cron, your host on the podcast where we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. I'm joined again by Anthony Skinner.
Woohoo! Hey, brother Ian, good to be here with you.
Happy holidays, my friend.
Happy holidays. Had a good one. Did you have a good one?
Man, I had a great one.
Yeah?
It was so sweet. We had such a quiet, lovely, almost quintessential New England Christmas in the South.
Nice.
It was quiet. Went to church, had a special breakfast, took a nap, watched a movie, played cribbage, went to bed. just me and my bride. It was very sweet.
I love it. We've been talking here, with our people about you and I. We haven't been together in quite a while.
In person, anyway.
I was a little, in person. I was a little held up over the holidays, but I'm getting over there in January, so I look forward to seeing you over there in East.
Okay, you have
Nashville.
promised to come over to East Nashville for the last 6 months, and I think now it's going to become a topic of conversation among the Typology family.
I'm headed over there, y'all.
People are worried about our breaking up or something. Anyway, hey man, I am so stoked for our conversation today because we've already started it, and it is with our new friend, Bethny Ricks, Enneagram 8, author of the new book, Face Forward, Reclaiming Hope When Everything Falls Apart. Bethany, welcome to Typology.
Oh, so happy to be here. Excited to be here.
Those of you who cannot see Bethany right now need to know that Bethany has the coolest hair of any guest we've ever had on Typology. We've had 300 people on Typology, and Bethany by far has the coolest hair of any guest we've ever had.
I'm honored for that. I will take that.
Bethany, you are an Enneagram 8. You told me you learned about the Enneagram a couple of years ago. Tell us about your journey with it.
So to give a little context, I am a human resources professional, so chief human resources officer. And my entire career, which is a little over 20 years now, has been using tools and assessments to find the right type of leaders for jobs, et cetera. So I had never heard about the Enneagram when my friend Ainsley had told me about it, and I was assessed out. So I, at that time, had been certified in Myers-Briggs, Strength Finders, all the things. And so I had no interest in this particular tool. So I said, I'm good. And in part, I wasn't interested because no assessment or tool had quite gotten me right. I felt misrepresented. I didn't feel understood. I blamed myself for that because I couldn't show up as my full self at work. Then I transitioned out of the traditional corporate world, and I'm just a curious person. And then asked Ainsley again. I said, tell me what you do. Tell me about this Enneagram thing. I keep seeing it. I took the test. I went through the process, and it came back that I was an Enneagram 8. I laughed very loudly in this chair because how dare I be seen and known in such a way. It kind of really hit the nail on the head there. I was really taken aback by what I was reading. It was like, what is this? These words, they are telling the truth.
What took you aback? What was so mind bending about it?
Because it was right.
Okay.
It was, I kept trying to find half-truths. I'm not poo-pooing any, other coaching or assessment or anything like that, but usually it was a little wrong, whether it was the way I was communicating and the why behind it, or how I was feeling, why I was behaving a certain way. It was just, it never really landed with me. I always felt like something was missing. But with the Enneagram, I couldn't really pick it apart the way that I could the other ones. Even in the unhealthy spaces, I was like, oh, that feels right. I can't really hide and explain my way out of that. So,
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about this because I do a lot of corporate work, right? That's like the majority of what I do.
Great.
Just facilitating workshops, assessments, and that kind of work. and coaching. I do a lot of coaching. I have a lot of 8 clients, in fact, as coaching assignments. And what do you think that is unique about the Enneagram as compared to, Myers-Briggs, DISC, Strength Finders, Berkman, and they're all great instruments. So I'm not putting those down, right?
Yeah,
all
no,
useful.
they are. They're all
but
great.
What is it about the Enneagram, do you think, that makes it uniquely suited to help people in the professional sphere to become the best expression of themselves?
I would say the way it focuses on the individual first versus some of the other tools, and even the people who would come in to do, the coaching sessions and things like that. It was really focused on the team and the individual operating within the team and not building the individual up so that they could understand themselves as an individual, just as a whole person. It was really this individual within this team that they have had to assimilate into, right? So we all show up into a corporate setting and then we assimilate into that culture. And so a lot of times you have the dynamic of the people in the room and they are, they're navigating the complexity of the organization. And so that kind of gets in the way with some of those assessments versus the Enneagram is really focused, from what I understand of it, really on the individual understanding themselves and then how they show up, no matter the environment. So whether it's in the corporate setting, whether it's at home, whether it's how you show up in the street in your day to day, it really kind of helps you understand those dynamics in that way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No,
and that's what's really different.
The other thing I love about it is, and this doesn't sound like it would sell in the corporate space, but it actually does, right? Like when people realize they're not reading something that's just describing what they do, but why they do it,
yes.
The motivation that's underneath it.
Yes.
And you just see the lights go on in their eyes during a day where I'm facilitating a workshop, and I will see people's eyes go, oh my gosh. And I love it too because they take it home. It's not just what they do at work. Exactly. I find it very hard to take the Myers-Briggs home with me, but I can take the Enneagram home any day of the week, right? Yes. It's like a whole life kind of picture. That's really cool.
It's also easy to explain in a team setting. Someone saying, now, I don't know if this is because of my Enneagram type. I focused on the Enneagram 8 and then I kind of, moved on with my life.
Yeah.
But I could see how in a corporate setting, someone saying I'm an Enneagram 2, et cetera, the summaries are very easy to, on the surface, understand versus all the letters of I am an INFJK. It's just kind of like, okay, well, what is that? It's very hard to retain. Mm-hmm. And in a team dynamic where you're in a pressure cooker, you're moving really, really fast, those letters get lost. And under pressure, as you know, that's who we really are. And all of that communication, all that work that you've done in the sessions, that also will get lost. If it's not easy to pull, if you can't just pull it, that stuff can get lost in the sauce.
Well, you have had quite a corporate career. Describe it for our folks.
Chaotic and wonderful and great. So, HR, my entire career, not what I thought I would do. I was going to be a sociology professor or go to law school, but had a pretty quick rise, became a vice president around 27. And then was named the head of HR for a subsidiary, which was a cannabis company. Grew that to a multi-billion-dollar business, was named the successor to the head of HR for Scott's Miracle-Gro, which is a lawn and garden company, and then walked away in 2001. During that time, a lot of awards. I was one of the youngest executives for a public company, African-American in the country. I've done all kinds of things that I'm very proud of, but it was done under a lot of stress and a lot of sacrifice and a lot of regret, I would say. There are a lot of things I would change. But in the end, here I am.
So as you said that, it's very interesting. Just watching your body energy. The moment you said, a lot of regret, your energy moved from hot to this kind of very vulnerable moment just then. I don't know, did you pick up on it? And there was a sort of a softening. And so I'm going to cycle back. What do you regret?
Gosh, the compromises that I made along the way to achieve some of the success. And a lot of the compromises were in private. They weren't public compromises. But it's the things that have to be done, the relationships that I put on the line for success. Those are the things that kind of run through as a leader, the poor decisions that I made as a leader, just how I would talk to people, how I would treat people. I'm like, oh my gosh, and justify that. Oh my God. Yeah.
So were you a hard ass?
Oh, for sure. Had to be, wanted to be. Yeah.
So there's that 8 energy thing, right? Or the stereotypical 8 stuff, right?
Yeah.
This larger than life, no nonsense, nose to nose, kick ass, take names, right? Like kind of energy. 240 volts, sleep on the floor to get the job done.
Absolutely.
Eat. Who needs to eat? And
sleep? What? Yeah.
Yeah. So as you reflect on your life now, and the book obviously is a great sort of exercise in self-reflection, right?
Yeah.
About the past and about what you've learned. Like, what have you learned?
Ooh.
I mean, look at all that. What have you learned? What is the couple of the big lessons you walk away with?
Well, the first thing that pops to mind when you ask that question is I really don't have it all figured out. And that's okay. As someone who likes to be in control, I at no point in time had it all figured out.
And yet 8s can really look like they have it all figured out when they don't.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And they talk like they have it all figured out, even when they don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was terrified. I mean, the book opens with me being completely terrified the day before I'm promoted to senior vice president. All of my peers are 50 and 60 years old. No one knew the utter terror I was feeling walking into that role in that moment. I was not going to tell anyone, but I felt like I was supposed to have it figured out because people had said, oh, you can do this. And I'm like, well, if I can do this, that means I must have all the answers. I must know all the solutions to the problems, because this is what leaders do. Leaders have the answers to the problems, and they don't crack under pressure. So I had to figure out how to lead well while also fumbling along the way. And it was in a public forum. And so there was a lot of pretending and a lot of apologizing.
Really?
Because at the end of one thing about me, I will apologize. It may take me, it may take me a little bit, but I do not outsource accountability. I will own my part. I will own my part.
I love that. I love the idea that, I wish we taught kids earlier on the importance of making amends.
Yeah.
As we go along life's way, because otherwise we just leave a long trail of broken hearts and feelings and things like that. So I'm a 25-year-old woman 8 on your track. What would you tell me? What advice would you give me?
The first thing I would say is it is going to be okay. It is going to be okay. The second thing I would say is get a mentor.
Oh, okay. All right. And what does that look like?
I'll expand then on that. Get a mentor who does not look like you.
Meaning?
I waited really late to get a mentor, which ended up being my boss, Denise. But the first 10 years of my career, I was flailing by myself. And the reason I was flailing by myself is because I was in corporate environments with mostly white men. And I felt like my mentor needed to be someone who was not a white male. Like my mentor has to be a woman or it has to be a Black woman. And there were people who were willing to mentor me, but I was like, you won't understand. So this can't be my mentor.
And you're saying that was a mistake, or
it was absolutely a mistake, because I think a lot of the fun, and I have no problem with saying that, though that might not be, the trendy thing to say. It's the right thing to say. because there was wisdom that I could have obtained very early on about leadership and decisive decision making from people who had gone before me, who were willing to give me access to information, but in my immaturity and I can figure it out on my own, and I don't want to be vulnerable with this person because they just won't understand. How could they? I closed myself off from that, and didn't get it until really later in my 20s. And it ended up working itself out, but man, it was hard. Gosh, those years were hard. Trying to figure out how to communicate, how to figure out how to navigate politics.
Yeah, how did you do with communication and politics? Let's break that down. What was your biggest struggle with communication, and how did you break out of, or how did you resolve it?
So I am naturally an introvert. So I go in big settings, so meetings, I'm generally very quiet. And so during this time, I would have been at Gap, which is very, very large. They were kind of in their prime, had just purchased Athleta. They were really humming at that time. And during that season, so this was maybe the mid 2000s, it was, you couldn't be in meetings and not talk. So if you didn't speak, that meant you weren't adding value. I'm sure you all remember that kind of that time in the corporate world. Mm-hmm. And so I would be beating myself up because I didn't feel like there was anything that needed to be said. Right. And so trying to navigate that of like, well, I don't really feel like there's anything else to say, but all these coaches and all these people are saying, if you don't say anything, you're not going to be promoted. You're not going to. So I'm just having this internal battle. And so I would say things that really didn't make any sense, but I was talking just to talk, and I didn't. So, I'm in that sharpness because I'm also battling the stereotype of the angry Black woman. Mm-hmm. So my communication is much sharper. So it's still direct. I like to say it's not direct. I just use fewer words, and I'm clear and concise.
So one of my kids, who's an 8, likes to say, you can yell without raising your voice.
Exactly. So, trying to, how do I deliver a message, get my point across, but also, I didn't have a lot of empathy in my delivery. It's just really to the point. So it was hard. That's what that looked like. That's what looked like what, this is obvious. Like, I don't understand why you don't want to hear that you're an idiot. Like, this is, you guys told me you wanted me to talk. I'm talking. You wanted me to add value. This is me adding value.
That is funny.
Command and control. Oh my gosh. Lord help me. A mess. Yeah, it was interesting.
So we oftentimes say that the 8 is motivated by this need to assert strength and power over others and the environment.
Okay.
In order to mask vulnerability and weakness in themselves. Yeah. So most 8s that I know of your particular subtype, I think, there's this, oftentimes this big, like we were talking about my mom earlier, right? It's like that, this big thing, but on the middle, there's this really gooey, soft, you know what I mean? Like tender, loving, gentle, ferociously protective, all that stuff in the middle. And I think when an 8 is starting to do the work of integration and growth is that they are becoming less and less concerned with guarding that and hiding it from other people. And they maintain the power and the strength, but they become more comfortable with vulnerability as a key facet of who they are, right?
Oh, yeah.
So where are you on the journey toward embracing your own vulnerability and weakness and tenderness?
Oh, a ball of putty now. Oh my gosh. Yeah, now.
Okay.
I would say in the last 3 or 4 years. But I would describe myself which is a part of the, when I was reading the Enneagram, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm definitely in a much healthier place, but I could see how I was before emotionally, very guarded, not vulnerable at all. I would say this book was very vulnerable, very open. And that's how I live my life, even though I'm still a little more guarded. But I would say, oh yeah, I'm only with people who I'm close with. Like a stranger, stranger danger.
Right.
What do you want? And why are you here?
Yes.
But they can talk to me. They can talk to me all they want. You can tell me your secrets. I will keep them very close and I will never share them. But this is not an equal exchange. Like, right. I don't know you.
Yeah. I know 8s they are naturally suspicious.
Absolutely, because why? Sharing is not caring. Anthony, sharing is not.
I love you. Absolutely, of course.
Yeah. What is it? It's weird. Like, what are we doing here? Like, we're just talking just to talk.
Right.
I wish everyone had access to the facial expressions.
I know.
The facial expressions are so good, man.
Totally.
Yeah, it's giving. Nah.
Yeah.
Hard pass.
So what was it that what was the impetus that sort of transformed your opinion to value vulnerability?
So I was married for 10 years. That was a very abusive marriage. I was in this career that was absolutely amazing, giving me all the access, all the things. I was also in this 10-year marriage that behind closed doors was extremely volatile. And I have 2 young children. They're now 13 and 11. So I'm trying to keep everything together. I go through this divorce. I am really angry with God because I'm like, what in the ham sandwich, bro? On one hand, I have all of this success, and then there's this. And in the mending of my relationship with God, and then really kind of taking those steps, I then have a health crisis where in 2020, COVID, my company, we were considered essential workers. It's a global company. I'm in HR. Everyone around the globe who works for the company is working. I have what's called a TIA, which is a precursor to a stroke. I'm hospitalized. And I'm like, this cannot be my life. Like, this can't, like, this is like great career, divorce. Now I'm mending, and now I'm in a hospital room, and my entire life is falling apart, and this doesn't make any sense. And so in that cracking, wide open, I just kind of decided to then be open-handed with my life. And it wasn't an automatic because life isn't a sap-sucking movie. But it was in that kind of vulnerable moment of I'm in this room, I'm by myself. I didn't have to be by myself, but I couldn't ask my brother to stay. We're very close, but I just couldn't find those words. And I didn't want to call my parent. It was like, what is going on? Like, you're surrounded by all these people who love you. Like, you could have called, someone could be here. Like, and so that kind of really just started that journey of being more open with my heart, with the people who love me. And I have been cracked open really ever since. Left my job. I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, for money? Oh, that's wild. That's crazy. It was kind of a series of things and then one really big thing. And I think it was God getting my attention. Kind of had to.
Yeah. Well, probably at the speed you were moving. I oftentimes think to myself that the 3 most courageous words anyone can say, but particularly in 8, are, I need help.
Yeah.
I need help.
Oh, you're trying to make me cry, but go ahead. That's fine.
That was suspicious.
Keep going. Thanks for having me. It was great. I'm going to kill my publisher, but go ahead, continue.
Well, here's the thing, but you can't because we have the same publisher.
Oh, yeah.
So I say that because, it's not just for 8s, it's for anybody.
Right.
You know, like it's frightening, but it's usually the beginning of an incredible journey when you finally have the courage. Because what sounds like cowardice or weakness when you say, I need help, is actually the bravest thing you've ever said.
Absolutely.
That's the irony.
Absolutely.
You know?
The other thing that you've said, Ian, in the past is that it's like, not to be stereotypical, but 8, 7s, and 3s typically have to hit like a major wall. Is that?
Well, lots of us do, but those types in particular have to usually, well, because it's working for you, right? So for in Bethany's situation, right? Here you have this very bright, strong, driven,
keep going,
240 volts, right, person. And in the corporate setting, you're getting strokes for killing it, even though you're making mistakes right and left. That's to be expected, right?
Yeah.
But you know, you're being rewarded for being an 8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you obviously managed to keep it reined in within the bell curve of normal.
Yeah.
That you were able to leverage it, and then, but unfortunately, sometimes with those types, they're strokes for the very thing that's preventing them from actually accessing their hearts and becoming full, whole human beings.
Yeah. And I was it put me in crisis because the very thing that I'm driven by at that time, which I have really dampered down the last 3.5 years, but I was driven by the success, the money, all the things, because it was giving me the stuff that I wanted to provide for my family. But that very thing that was giving me the access, the power, all of that was also killing me because it was the TIA was bought on by stress.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in the pressure cooker. I liked being in the pressure cooker. The doctor said the pressure cooker is killing you. And when I left, we had just crossed the $1 billion mark for the subsidiary that we had been charged to grow from. So it was just like, okay, so now we've reached this amazing accomplishment, feather in the cap. And I was at a decision point. Do I want to continue to stay or do I want to do something else?
And here you are, you've written a book.
Here I am, and I'm happier than what I've ever been in my life. I got married in January of 2024. I said I'd never get married again. And I married a wonderful man. And so all of those, like when I look back, I'm like, oh, that hospital moment, that cracking, for me, I would not have been able to be in relationship had my heart not been cracked open in that moment. And then I had space to figure out what that felt like.
So did you go to therapy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And how was that for you as an 8?
From what I'm not in therapy now, but from what she had said, it took 6 months to actually get me to talk. I didn't feel like it was that long, but that's what she said.
In her esteemed opinion.
Yeah, in her profession, she said it took 6 months, and I was meeting with her every week. And so it took 6 months to get me to actually start talking about what had went on during that time period and what was going on in the workspace for me. Because again, I was an executive, and once you become a VP, an SVP, a chief officer, you can't talk about any of the things. And it was an interesting dynamic. I was a Black woman and the only one. And so there was a lot of pressure, spoken and unspoken. So, you got to deliver. There's there's no pretending. You got to deliver.
And I've had this conversation with other Black women before who are 8s, and you actually are in a more difficult bind in some ways because of the stereotype of the angry Black woman.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, just an angry Black woman. You know what I mean? It's like,
yes.
Oh, wait a minute, right?
Like what am I angry about? I'm just not talking.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But then it's pegged as something.
Yeah.
Right? It's pegged as something. And just all the gymnastics, the mental gymnastics you must have to go through to figure out, how do I navigate this moment in this identity? Like how do you
deal with it? And for me, I come from a family, we're very humorous. So mine was humor. There was an executive who pulled me out of a meeting. He didn't like what I had to say. And we were walking down the hall. And so in front of people, he looked at me and he goes, I bet you're going to vote for Obama. So this is what I looked at my hand, because I'm not going to give you the reaction you want in that moment. I looked at my hand and I jumped back and I said, oh my gosh, I'm Black. And that's, everyone stood, oh, he said, you're going to vote for Obama because you're Black.
Amazing.
And I looked at my hand and I jumped back and I said, oh my God, I'm Black. And he looked and his eyes are wide and everyone did what you did. They just busted out laughing because I'm like, you're trying to minimize me because you don't like my answer. That's not going to happen. So I would always combat things with humor, which actually helped me navigate in the moment. But then there's still the weight of having to deal with you. Why did you feel like that was okay? Like, deal with that psychologically afterwards. But yeah, no, I was like, oh my God, like I need a moment. I had no idea. I didn't know that.
But you know what's so great about it? You know what's so great about a joke though, is it can give you a moment, right? Because it's like, while everyone's laughing, you can go and try and figure out what to do next.
That's exactly what I did. And he was so caught off guard. And we ended up building a relationship and I became one of his main HR partners. And it led to some of the promotions that I received. But I was like, you're not going to hold court, not in front of other people. That's behind closed doors, but no. So I just now realized at the age of 20 something that I'm Black. That's crazy. Oh my God.
Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's LIBSYN, ads.com today.
It's wild. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. So tell me about the Face Forward. I want to know, like, what was the impetus for writing the book? And you make a lot of promises in it, and like, what are the deliverables here? Like, what are you delivering to people?
The book is really coming from a place of, I want people to ask themselves the right questions to help propel forward when things are falling apart in their life. Right. And so when they feel like they're failing, I have failed a lot in my life. I share some of those stories. I've made mistakes. But if they're dealing with self-doubt, how do you overcome those things? How do you have resilience? How do you have grit? How do you find grit in those moments when your life is crumbling? And by the end of the book, my hope is that the reader remembers that they have it within themselves to get up again and again and again and keep going over and over and over. And so it's not a promise that if you read this, all your problems will be solved. That's not it. But it is that you can and you will, if you decide to, keep reclaiming your power, keep reclaiming your voice, keep finding courage over and over. And so that's kind of the heart of the book and the stories in it.
So one of the things that you do recommend in the book, right, is that it's really important to face the shadow dimension of who you are, like the not so pretty sides of who you are, right?
Yeah, ask those questions.
The grossest aspects of our behaviors right in the eye, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like, is that easy for you?
No. Oh my gosh, no. I mean, yes, I should say yes and no. I've had self-awareness in part because of the corporate world beat into me. I don't think you can be an executive in a high pressured environment and not have self-awareness kind of thrown at you. So yes, it's easy. And then in some ways it's not. And so that's why I kind of boiled it down to questions of, if you can ask yourself if you can get to the point of actually asking yourself these questions, that's half the battle. And then the other piece is you got to answer the question.
Okay. So how do people look into their own shadows though, and begin to examine those dimensions of who they are that are holding them back, but they can't see them? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to use the term blind spot, but that is kind of what we're talking about.
How do you see the blind spot?
Like, how do you exhume something that may be so close to you that you can't see it?
Well, I think that's community. I think it's having people around you potentially who can see it for you, but it has to be people who you trust, right?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, I think one way is like, I do think like the Enneagram is a great starting place. Like like to show you like, okay, yes. I'm an 8, and that means I am not naturally, people will read me as being X, Y, and Z. There are times when I am, it just reveals to you those aspects of your personality that, if left off the leash, are going to cause a lot of problems for you.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
That. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that there has to be, I think there has to be a level of willingness to be self-aware, though. Like, people have to be willing to do that. And I don't think everybody is.
No, and I was going to say, in my work in the corporate world, I'm amazed at how many people at the very highest echelons of leadership have very little self-awareness.
Well, that's why I paused for a second, because I was like, well,
I couldn't. I was just like, is she going to say it? Is she going to say that?
I paused. I said, never mind. No, I'm going to erase that. No, that's why you have consultants like yourself and people officers to help with the self-awareness. But I agree with you. Yeah.
So I literally got a gig. This is years ago. I literally got a gig at a Fortune 500 company to come and speak to an entire division in this company and present the Enneagram and talk about it, self-awareness and growing and emotional intelligence and all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Nah. And so I go in, I'm talking, and at the break, this woman who invited me to come, and she was in HR, she said to me, I just need you to know that the reason you're here. And by the way, I am now speaking to 500 people, right? Yeah. And she's like, the reason that you're here is because the head of this division lacks so much self-awareness that we wanted to bring you in just to force her to listen to you for the day, so that she could realize that she's not in the right job.
Yeah. 1%.
Right. And I'm like, well, it would have been good to know in advance, I guess, but literally the head of the division had so little self-awareness that a little group inside said, let's bring Ian in to present the Enneagram. So this person will figure out like their issues, because we don't know how else to tell them how bad they are at what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally. Right? I believe that. Yeah. I believe
499 people got together and said, can we just bring someone in to help this one?
This one person, I have done that before, where it's, you're not going to listen to me. You're not going to listen to anybody else. So can we bring in someone who is respected and, to make the point, to hold the mirror up, right? Somebody to hold the mirror up.
I have been the mirror holder many times in my life. And that's okay. In fact, and it's low cost for me. I mean, just in terms of my coming and doing it, I'm happy to, if it's true, I'm happy to say it, All right. So what are you personally working on in your own heart right now?
Oh, that's a good question. What am I personally working on? Well, in the spirit of vulnerability, it is staying vulnerable. It can be very easy for me that is something I have to keep front of mind, because I'm in a new season as someone who has been married before. That was not a healthy marriage. It is. I'm now with a wonderful man. We're a year married. It's a beautiful relationship. We spend more time laughing than doing anything else. But reminding myself to stay in this place of openness and vulnerability is something that I just have to think about, which maybe some people don't have to, but for me I do, and I think that's healthy for me, to not fall into a pattern of, okay, I don't have to think about this anymore. This is just to be, that's front of mind. open communication about how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling what I'm feeling and saying it out loud.
And how's it going?
It's a little uncomfortable for me. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, but he loves it. Joseph he's like, tell me all the things.
What's his type?
I do not know. I don't know.
Oh, you got to find out, Bethany.
I know. I will find out, and I will. I told him the other day, I'm like, you need to take the Enneagram, go onto my
website and grab the assessment.
Okay, I will, and I'll have him. I had meant for him to do it before we connected, but he was like, yeah, I'll take it, and we'll
I think
do it.
It would be it will take you to another level.
Oh, I would love that.
It will take you to another level.
We are complete opposites. He thinks that I'm a nut. He's very analytical. I call him finance guy, Mr. And I'm jumping out of airplanes and hiking up mountains. And he's like, nah, I'll stay right here. But it's a beautiful, beautiful relationship. So that's what I'm working on in terms of my heart and those things.
I love that. So in the book, you talk about a couple of principles, 3 actually, to help people break out of what I would call, what you might just call bad behaviors or maladaptive behaviors. What are the 3 principles?
So it's back to kind of the questions that I pose to people. And the first question is it important? And then the second is, why is it important? And then who decides? So the questions are very simple, but they're not ones that people typically ask. We kind of get into this habit of doing. We just kind of do. But if you pause, so if you're thinking about implementing it, first of all, pause and ask, is it important? Is this thing, this behavior, this pattern, is it important? Why? Right?
So give me an example. Give us an example of this.
A behavior or an action?
Yeah.
So I'll give something personal. There was a group that I was a part of, like a business group, like-minded individuals. It took up a ton of time. And I just started doing it because someone told me that it would be really good for me to do, just in terms of a networking thing. But it went against one of the boundaries I had set for myself, which is time. So think about what we had just talked about in the corporate world, just all the time but I did it anyway, right? And I was becoming overloaded. So in something like this, you go, why is this important? At the end of the day, when I went through this exercise, it really wasn't. It wasn't important, but why is it important, right? So, for networking, potentially relationships, and who decided? Well, I actually didn't decide it was important. Someone else told me it was important. And so from there, you have to decide whether or not you're going to continue with it or stop altogether, which I ultimately ended up stopping altogether because it was going against some of the core principles and values that I had set in place for myself and boundaries that I had set. So that's a very small example, but it can scale. If that makes sense.
I love this. Everyone, we're talking to our new friend, Enneagram 8, Bethny Ricks, author of Face Forward, Reclaiming Hope When Everything Falls Apart. Bethany, thanks for coming on the show. How do people learn more about you?
You can find me at my website, which is my name, BethnyRicks.com, or on social media, Bethny Ricks.
Awesome.
And that's Bethny. Yeah.
Bethany, thank you so much for being on. And for all of you listening, you know how we end this thing. May you have love. May you have joy. May you have peace. May you have healing. May you have rest. Until next time.